Hey, you're listening to a Biscazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
I'm your long lost co-host, Mark.
And I'm your co-host that has been here since day one, Josh.
I got confused. It's-
Oh, you don't have any WCW or WWE intros for me today?
no, I had work and I'm still adjusting to time zone differences. So yeah, but
Sure.
we do have zombies with us again for the third time.
I'm back again. You
Yeah.
guys
Yay.
are a glutton for punishment, right? Is that what this is?
I think this entire episode is going to be a glutton for punishment.
Oh yeah.
This movie is 100% Mark's idea. I have strong feelings about this. This was my first time. Mark,
I
what did
Oh,
saw
oh my
I
God, it's
I
your first time right now.
I
what did you bring us, Mark?
Oh.
the like awesome 80s movie Legend. And I've seen
uh,
your rating on Voodoo, and I can't smack you because we're not in the same room.
I have some things to say about this one.
Legend is a classic, though.
It
look,
is. But I have one statement that I really need to get off my chest when you guys are ready for it.
please, because I don't want to be the only one this episode with hot takes.
Okay, so mine is I want to know how many pounds of glitter they used for this movie because every fucking thing, sorry, but is covered in glitter. The outfits, the food, their
Uh,
faces, they just like there's floating glitter. Everything is glittery. There's like Satan is glittery. Why is everything so glittery?
there was craft herpes everywhere.
Yeah. It's like someone opened a can and was like, well, shit, it's everywhere. Let's just keep going with it.
It's the 80s, you know? This was the era of cocaine and Wall Street. And like this was kind of where we started taking like sex work a little bit more serious. So it's not surprising that you're gonna have a fantasy movie that is bringing in real world glitter. It's just bound to happen.
One
It's
of
on
Tom Cruise's
everything.
one of Tom Cruise's super early movies.
Oh God.
I
Yeah.
think it was Mia Sarah's first movie.
I
No, she had done Ferris Bueller before this movie.
yeah,
Ferris
yeah, that
Bueller
one
was after this.
was it? I
I
thought
thought it was
Ferris Bueller.
85.
This
This is
is 85.
86.
No, Legend is 85.
No, you're right. Legends 85.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right, Mark.
So same year they came out?
This came out
Mm,
in 85.
yeah, I
When
think
does
Ferris Bueller's 86.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then
Oh.
you had Tim Curry as the Prince of Darkness.
I
Well,
did not
Tim,
know it was him until I swear to God. So I've seen this movie when I was younger, and then I rewatched it just for this, which was a big shock because nostalgia in the 80s, you're like, I love 80s movies, especially 80s fantasy is my jam. So then watching it again, I was like, all right, first of all, this movie didn't age poorly, as in, like, there's nothing triggering about it, which is fine. But oh my God, like the acting and everything. I'm like, wow, this is a product of its time. We'll say that.
and on that note, I will show my hands. I hated this movie.
Yeah.
I hate this movie. I have been a Tim Curry fan since I was young enough to remember. And this has always been a blind spot in his filmography. He looks great. I think everything about this Rob Bottin, bringing it back to our episode on The Thing earlier this year, same practical effects people that are in this. And I fantasy is just not my jam. I will say that is just not my thing. And I've been wanting to see this movie for years because of Tim Curry, and he was the best part of this movie, and he's in it for 4 minutes.
He was, and he had like an epic costume for this movie.
He did. Yeah.
I, what is the point of spending all the money on the practical effects of this movie to make Tim Curry look as good as he does, to have him be in the movie for literally 5 minutes?
Well, the amusing thing is this was done by Ridley Scott.
Yeah,
It and he had done Alien before this, about 6, 7 years before this, and had a couple other fairly big movies through that time period. And he just decided he was going to do a fantasy movie with Legend.
Legend's such it's such a weird hodgepodge because, we look at Tom Cruise being the last American action blockbuster star in today's day and age, and then you see him here and he's like freaking Discount Wesley from The Princess Bride, and you have Tim Curry who's in this movie for 5 minutes. Like, this movie is such a weird, like, collection of things, of like actors and talent involved in it, that it feels like it should be a fever dream, but it's such a traditional fantasy film. It doesn't make sense to me.
It's um it's weird because there are things I really liked about this movie. And one was just being that there was like, okay, I don't want to say like a strong female lead, but still borderline on that because like she didn't need quote unquote the help of someone rescuing her. Like she kind of held her own a little bit. But I also feel like her dialogue was a lot better than Tom Cruise's. Oh my God. It was so bad. So bad. Like, so, and he just seemed like a little wimpy boy in the beginning. And at the end, he was just like, I hated his character. I just absolutely hated it.
Oh, I
This
mean, uh, as far as dialogue go, Blix has the best line in the entire movie. At the beginning, when he's going out when Blix the Goblin is going hunting for the unicorn and sees Princess Lily. You remember that?
Oh.
I just got done binging a bunch of South Park, and specifically the member berries season.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what the member berries, like, it's the entire thing is like it's talking grapes, and all they say is, "You remember that? You remember Tatooine?"
So, so Blix has a habit of speaking in rhyme through the movie off and on. And at that
Mhm.
specific scene, Blix makes the comment, maybe innocent, maybe sweet, not half as nice as rotting meat.
Rotten meat. Yeah, that one was good.
That's like the best line in the whole movie.
It it is, but all right. So, like, maybe this is just me being like used to this with because of like being a fan of like DC's darker side, but Etrigan, the demon, like, speaks in rhyme. And it bothered me that so much of the front half of this movie with Blitz's character spoke in rhyme, and then somewhere along the way, like, it just didn't matter anymore. The inconsistency just kind of like, why make it in the first place? Like, I liked the fact that it was rhyming in the first place, and then it just kind of like moved away from that.
It does. It kind of Blix. I keep wanting to say her because it was an actress that played Blix, but I think Blix was a he. But I don't remember exactly. But anyways, yeah. During the later scenes, Blix starts. It's a lot of one-liners here and there, and no real opportunity for it. But it was kind of cool when they showed some of those lines, and that's like the coolest line in the movie. But I think for me, it's one of those movies I saw as a kid with like Labyrinth and Princess Bride and things like that. And it's a little bit lesser known, but still has its own little following these days.
I think the reason that most modern day audiences know this is because of Tim Curry. Like, I feel like if you take this picture of Tim Curry's Prince of Darkness and had no other context for this movie, just showed that, somebody would know, be like, oh yeah, it's this is Legend. But like, you show them a picture of like Mia Sarah or Tom Cruise, any of the goblins, or what's the troll or fairy, the guy that helps
Oh, the like satyr dude or
Gump.
not
Gump,
the
yeah.
Gump,
yeah, Gump.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You show them a picture of Gump, and they have no connection to that. I think the reason that you have such a cult following of that is the practical effects in this movie, and it is the commanding, memorable performance of Legend. Like, or of Tim Curry. If I walk away from this movie by this time next year, I probably can't tell you any detail about this movie except for the scenes with Tim Curry in it.
Yeah. Tim Curry is like, which is funny because I didn't know it was him until probably like, I don't know, maybe less than 10 years ago I found out. I was like, oh, that didn't click for me. But you're right. The presence he has and that like the whole costume and everything is so iconic and epic, and yet he's not in it enough. I felt like the beginning and they let up, it was just like total fantasy laying into it, but like heavy on the cheesy part. And then they were trying to get a story in there, and it just felt like there were glimmers and glimpses of a really good plot or could tell a story, but the dialogue sucked and they were all over the map. Like it was some, you're right, like a hay fever dream is a really good way to describe it.
They do have a director's cut of the movie out. I've got a copy of the director's cut, but I couldn't find it because it's in a box somewhere in the house with the rest of my DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff.
Excuses,
I know,
excuses.
you should have dug that out.
So yeah, now you know what you get to look forward to when you visit, Josh.
I I am curious, like, can you like tell me, like, do you know the notable differences between the theatrical cut and the director's cut?
It's been a while since I've watched it, so I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But I do own a copy, and it's fairly easy to get. I think if you buy a Blu-ray of it, I think it's a theatrical and director's cut on the same disc. Kind of like Terminator 2. The Blu-ray of Terminator 2 has three different cuts of the movie on one disc.
Yes,
One
it
of them you
does.
have to enter a code to unlock,
Yes, you do.
and you get
Right.
you get a uncut that's like 3.5 hours. But yeah, I think the director's cut's like 15 minutes longer or something like that of Legend.
Eh, What possibly could I feel like I'm like really crapping on this movie. What possibly in those 15 minutes could do you think could change the way I feel about this movie?
If I remember correctly, which I'm doubting
Wait,
I am, but if I am, I think it was stuff with Tim Curry. I think it was more Prince of Darkness scenes, but I'm not positive.
They cut it.
that's yeah, that's the only way I come back to this movie. And I need like a musical number thrown in there.
But I mean, at the same time, though, I think this came out just before Risky Business, which is when Tom Cruise started really kind of making a name, was Risky Business.
Risky
Everybody,
business.
everybody remembers the underwear scene in that movie where he comes sliding out, doing karaoke with a broom.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Um,
that
and this was either just before or just after, but before Risky Business got big, one or the other. So you got early Tim Cruise, Tom Cruise. You got before he was really anybody big at the time, and the prominent actor was Tim Curry. That was almost used in a manner similar to oh, what's her name in the beginning? I could see her face. The In the beginning of Scream that was there just for
oh,
promotion.
Drew
Yeah, Drew
Barrymore.
Barrymore. So he's in there like 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops, if that. And he's got one of the best performances in the movie by
Hmm.
far. He's also got the best makeup in the movie with all his prosthetics.
Some of the best
And
lines.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh,
He he does. And like I think like if I had to recommend this, it would be solely for Curry's performance.
Mm.
But, if you guys have listened to our show for long enough, then you guys know that Mark and I are huge advocates for practical effects. And I think where this movie like fails in terms of story, narrative, writing, the cheesy acting, I think it is allowed to excel because of the sets the costumes, the practical effects, a
Mm.
lot of those fantastical elements to where like I might not be a fantasy guy, but I really have a strong adoration for the worlds that are built. And when they're built practically, I feel like my heart overflows. Like some of the stuff with like the unicorns and like the scene where like uh Tom Cruise's character Jack is like discovering he's like being followed by like the small like little fairy and like they take him to like the sword and like he gets the garments like that was probably one of the best reveals in the film and I just felt like I really loved the way that it was this world, the way that winter felt cold when you watched it, like it felt like you read it.
I just have a question too. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but he goes to get his suit of armor. He's wearing everything but pants. Why is it that it's wintertime and he's got long sleeve armor, a shield, a sword, no freaking pants?
Well, I
What?
mean, the one dude was passing out booze before he went in there. So
Yeah. Yeah. Also, is that the Gump played by a child?
He
I
at the
think
time,
so.
I'm
yeah, at the
pretty sure that
time
was and they just
he
had a
was.
voiceover, like all the
Yeah.
voices. Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, that is totally a child playing this, which is really weird. Um,
Well, considering that I believe if I remember reading correctly, Mia Sarah was like 16 when they taped it, when they did recording. She
oh,
was 18 when it
really?
was released.
Wow, I cannot tell people's age anymore. Once I get older, I'm like, everybody looks young or
Look,
this or that.
Yeah.
it's that's just a Hollywood thing. I mean, most of like the when you watch like teen comedies, like most of like American Pie, I think like the actors from like some of the Mean Girls actors, but like that
They were
weird
always
like
older. Yeah.
yeah, that weird like stoner like sex teen comedy that all that era of like the late 2000s or the late late 90s, early 2000s, all of that is like 20s and like early to mid
Mm,
20s across the board. So it's not really a surprise that those practices have been around since the 80s.
yeah.
But it's one of the things I find interesting about Legend in general is that, like I mentioned, Labyrinth had come out around that time period, and other movies like it. But Legend was just, for being considered a kids movie, was so dark for what it
I
is.
didn't realize that was considered a kids movie.
It
Yeah.
is PG. It is PG, but you have to also understand that ratings now and ratings then were completely different.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Spaceballs is a great example. Spaceballs
Space is a
ha
great movie,
is
period.
a
But
great
yeah,
movie,
I quote that movie all the time. I love that movie.
but it also has like, I mean, it has like tons of sex jokes in it. It
Mm,
has an F-bomb in it. It is the equivalent of like today's like teen sex comedy.
yeah.
Then you like go back and like even like the original like Wes Craven's Swamp Thing had nudity in it. Like
Yeah.
so like ratings were like different, but like I think when you're talking about like those three, like those are probably like the holy trinity of like fantasy from the 80s where you had would you say you said Legend, uh
Labyrinth.
Labyrinth
Labyrinth
was
and
86. 'Cause
yeah,
I remember
and
that.
Princess Bride.
Hmm.
This is a poor man's Princess Bride.
It
There.
is.
I said the
It
mark.
is. I mean, I cherish it because I think of it as a product of its time, and as a fantasy movie, it has some great things in it that I absolutely love. But watching it now, there's also where I'm like, wow, that was really bad. Like I hate Tom Cruise. I really do. And then watching him in this, and I'm like, yeah, this doesn't help either. His character sucked. His lines sucked. I really liked What's Her Face though, and my favorite scene from the whole movie is when she's dancing and then she twirls and she turns and she has this gorgeous gothic outfit that I absolutely love. And then yeah, that is
Which
just perfect.
I loved that outfit too, and I love that whole sequence as well. And that well, again, like we're comparing this to like other movies that have done that concept better.
Mm-hmm.
Aladdin. that scene where the darkness like falls in love with her. That's literally the end of Aladdin where Jafar tries to get Jasmine.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
which
But
came out
Aladdin was
later.
from the 90s.
92.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it stole it.
Mhm.
Oh, look, I don't care about who stole it. I'm talking about who wore it better. Uh, talking about like favorite scenes in this movie though, the scene where it's one of Darkness's like demons is dehorning the unicorn. That scene and just like the collection of like colors, the way that Ridley Scott shot that and the movement, the fluidity of the camera, 100% the best like shot scene in this movie. It is 100% just absolutely gorgeous and stunning.
I wish, like, I don't know if this is in a director's cut, but I wish they would have shown, like, them putting the horn back on the unicorn because
Yes.
they just kind of assumed they were just like, yeah, we got the horn, yay. And then you see the unicorns galloping. I'm like, I want to see it like that magic that boop, you attach it and boom, sparkles and that prettiness again, you know? That would
I
have been
thought they,
nice.
I thought they did.
They don't. And
No.
no,
No, they like place it on and then like the camera like pans away.
yeah.
Like yeah, like it's such a dramatic scene
Hmm.
where like it's getting dehorned and then it's just like they place it on and it's just like it
Yeah,
just
I
the
want it
magic happens.
more. Yeah. Yeah. And talk
Yeah.
about who did it better. Personally, my favorite unicorn movie is The Last Unicorn, but they did a much better take on The Last Unicorn. But no, I feel like now I'm shitting on this movie. I liked it,
It's
but
fine.
I
It's
also have a
contagious.
lot of
I
strong feelings.
I will say though, I really like the way that this movie used unicorns as kind of like this like equivalency of like it's so sacred that like they make it such a big deal to where when when Lily goes up and she like touches it like Jack like really freaks out and like
Throws a
the
hissy
sheer
fit.
yeah like the sheer fact that like you could kill every unicorn and that's how like that's how darkness comes into the world like I love so much of the setup of this movie. I feel like the payoff is really underwhelming though.
Mhm. Or that the part where he talks about like the unicorns. He's like, oh, the male's dead, and only the female's alive. You know, she can't do anything. And then Darkness is like, she's the bringer of life. That was kind of like a
Yeah.
little femininity jab there.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were using Lily touching the unicorn is almost like contaminating its purity.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, when you talk about like in that way, like I could definitely see that, especially with like Darkness's comment later that you brought up Zambies about it being like the bringer of life.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think that you could definitely make an argument for that, but I feel like it's trying to find depth in this movie is really, really stretching.
I mean, they
So
actually say, I think it's Gump says that in one scene.
says that
It's
it
actually
corrupts
stated
its
in the movie.
Yeah, he said he
Yeah.
corrupted it.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
No.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Or
like trying to like make connections to like the mental health. I'm like, is he trying to like talk about like sexual assault awareness? Like
no.
trying to make the connection there? There is a greatly an injustice, and if you want to see an injustice, go watch Victim Suspect on Netflix. It's a great documentary.
I do have to point out that this movie actually is very respectful in the way that it handles like the female. How many movies, especially in like the 80s and back then, that women would just be like kidnapped and then they don't try to woo them, they just like take them. And Darkness is actually being a gentleman to her and like said he cares about her thoughts and stuff. And like so it is a little weird in that way, but it's kind of nice. Like it just shows a different side to like fantasy in the way they took this movie that Darkness actually isn't a total like douchebag to what they think, you know?
But at the same time, he's trying to manipulate her into becoming his.
Yes. Yes.
But
But then she manipulates him.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Also true. Counterpoint, Mark.
Everybody got played in this movie.
Everybody got played.
Except for Tom Cruise.
Except for Tom Cruise. Oh my God.
I
hated him.
Look, I know you guys all crap on Tom Cruise, but I miss Tom Cruise in like his first like 10 years because he had such variety. Like when you look at this movie compared to Risky Business, compared to Cocktail, compared to Top Gun, Days of Thunder, there's so much variety there. And then he gets into Mission Impossible and just like big middle finger to like every other kind of thing. I mean, he's done like weird like side trips with like, Tropic Thunder, Vanilla Sky, but this was when he was like open to like exploring other genres, and now he just does Mission Impossible movies exclusively.
And then you had right there in the middle, you had Minority Report.
Mm-hmm. Minority Report was a good movie though. That is actually one that I don't mind Tom Cruise in. I did like that movie.
Yeah, that was a trippy movie, especially when you see some of the stuff going on now. But that's not what we're here to talk about.
Yeah,
we're talking about Legend.
I mean, he's all right. So like, I think it boils down to this. We were talking about this on That's High Praise. Like, does a movie's like bad acting, does it come down to the bad actor or bad writing? So in this case, would it be Tom Cruise working with what he's been given, or the fact that this actually just was a cheesy script for its time?
For him. Oh, you can go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say for him, because I feel like I've been hating on him this entire time. And I don't like Tom Cruise. He's not one of my favorite actors. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt of the fact that this movie, he just wasn't given enough. He has not a lot of lines, I think, compared to everybody else. Maybe later on he gets a little bit more, but in the beginning he's mostly just like look like a deer in headlights, and I just don't think they gave him a really good script to work with. So I hate his character. I don't fully blame Tom Cruise for this movie.
Well, if you look at Ridley Scott's like work, he's kind of really hit or miss. What's actually hit for him has hit big. Gladiator and Alien are like the first two that come to mind. But a lot of his stuff, he turned around after Gladiator and did Troy, and they talked about, from the guy who brought you Gladiator, and you watched Troy, and it had a lot of cheesy lines.
It did.
Some really shitty CG and a lot of the fights. And it was like, how do you go from that to this? So is it a case of Ridley Scott writing a script, and it said his research was like reading Grimm's fairy tales and other fairy tales and stories, and he wanted to do a fairy tale. So this is what he came up with. So it had like every little cliche thing you could find in some sort of fantasy. And I would put more of it on Ridley Scott than on the
Mm.
actors.
Yeah. Even the beginning, like the thing that it wrote was just kind of like the basic definition of like fantasy stories, like the prologue,
Yeah.
where it's
Yep.
like darkness, you can't have light without darkness. And I feel like that's like always been said. So that's like the
Yeah.
premise of this movie. Okay.
So in our marriage, she is the fantasy person. Her first tattoo she got was Smaug from Tolkien's book. And
Mm.
like I mean, when the pandemic was kind of like slowly coming back into procession, and all the theaters were showing like rerun movies, our local ones did the extended versions of Lord of the Rings, and we were there opening night. So like fantasy is like my wife's deal, and so she sat down to read, like to sit down and watch this movie with me. She starts watching that at like the opening scroll, doesn't even get halfway through it. She says, "This is going to be the cheesiest movie I feel like I've ever seen."
Yes, yeah. As soon as that goes on, I'm like,
And
yeah.
my
So
wife,
had she not seen it either?
no, she didn't even know this movie existed. So
What?
the other thing too is that she's in Zambi's corner as well. She does not like Tom Cruise. She's not a Tom Cruise fan. And so she like sees him. I was like, wait till you see who's in this movie. It's just his name, and there's this like audible groan that filled my apartment. And like so like the first like few scenes come in, she's like, "Oh, he's a mute. Is this a is this like gonna be his whole thing? Is like is this his stick?" And I'm like, I I'm pretty sure it's not. I don't know why he is the way that he is. I thought honestly like he was also like some sense of like a fantastical creature in this movie. Like me personally, like I was expecting him to be like when they were like, "Yeah, you have a connection to this forest." I was expecting him to be like somewhere
Magic
along
missile. It's
like magic, or like he's like maybe like a wizard in training, or I even thought from his like getup that he was a lost boy.
oh my God, thank you. You said that because when I first saw the opening scene, I was like, is he freaking Peter Pan? What is happening right now? I thought he was a fae. Um, but yeah, I'm totally, he was just like, when she touched a unicorn, he just like walked away from her and all of that and just like did not communicate. There were a lot of like weird moments. And then Gump, when he like got the riddle, he threw like this weird hissy fit in the snow and then he snapped out of it all of a sudden.
Yeah, there are moments in this movie that like definitely remind you that this is a film that's catered for children.
Yeah.
Like even despite some of its like darker moments, you're like you have moments like that where he like just throws the hissy fit and like walks away from Lily, and then like the whole like you brought up Gump and the getting the riddle, like it just clearly this is a kids movie. This is a movie made for kids.
Yeah. But and then like that's as I was watching it, I am reminded of like The Labyrinth is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's just
Sure.
my childhood one. And then you go back and I kind of miss the one thing this movie did really well was those characters and the character designs, and they were less puppets and they were more actual people in this, but they did it so well. And you can tell it was like, yeah, a kids movie. And I think The Labyrinth was supposed to be a kids movies too. But
It is.
yeah, it just like they have fantastical creatures, and this movie does nail that.
Yeah, I don't know if like anybody else thought this too, but like the design of like Darkness's like minions or demons, whatever you want to call them, they reminded me of uh freaking Ghoulies. I don't know why they just reminded me of Ghoulies, like specifically from the fourth one. So in the
I
Ghoulies franchise, there are the first three are all puppets, but the last one are people in prosthetics. And the
so
way
I
that
could
like
I could
prosthetics
see
are.
that. I could see that with the pig goblin. Maybe a stretch with Blix, but the one in the armor reminded me of one of the knights on the little dinosaurs in Labyrinth.
Yes, that's exactly what he reminded me of. The one with the helmet that ended up
Yeah,
being an actual like elf creature.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was just the one on the that goes like
yeah.
doo-doo-doo-doo. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I thought when I first saw it.
I mean, even with the hate that Josh is like spewing right now, you still got to admit the costumes and special effects were pretty epic.
Mhm.
I I have stated on the record that the best thing this movie has to offer is Rob Bottin
Mhm.
with his set design, his practical effects, just the costume design, everything about this from a technical aspect is brilliant. Everything else is pure crap.
I do think that like the design for darkness and his bulbous horns would
Mm.
look stupid most of the time, but for some reason they did a really good job of making them work.
I agree. And I think a large portion of that comes from the build of Kareem. Like I think a large portion of it is because when you look at him, I mean, he has those like broad, like quarterback shoulders, and you could tell that he's got that muscle. I'll think a couple
I
years
mean,
later after this, he goes to play Pennywise and doesn't look anything like this, but like
that's because a
still,
lot of that was prosthetic. Most of
exactly.
that is an outfit.
They did a
Yeah.
good job like with portion like balancing it so it didn't seem so like because he could have very easily turned into like a bobblehead or something like that, but
I also feel like, like when you talk to like most people about like their how they picture the devil, it's typically everything that we know is from um Dante's Inferno, kind of our ideology,
mhm.
modern day culture. Visually, I always think he looks like Tim Curry from Legend. Like, I feel like those two kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, a little bit.
He also like changed color because in the beginning he was like actual dark, and then towards the end he got red. Or was
Oh,
Well,
I
I
just remembering that?
in the
no.
beginning, it was different lighting because all of
Yeah.
his contacts were glowing in a black light, and so were
Yeah,
his nails.
yeah.
So
Okay.
it was just different lighting that they used for it in the beginning.
I
And
never
then
got that connection. I was just like, okay.
yeah, and
I
then pretty much the rest of the movie it was him red and normal
Mhm.
lighting.
also like didn't understand why they felt like they had to like hide him in shadows. Like when all of the goblins were, is that what I keep calling them demons. Is that what they were? They goblins?
There's
Yeah, they're goblins.
goblins, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when the goblins like they're playing around with the unicorn horn and they're all talking about like the power that they would use it for, and darkness kind of comes out in like that cloak. Like I don't understand. Again, I guess this is probably come back to my complaint of like not enough Tim Curry. Like why hide him in shadow when he looks so menacing and like so good? Like it just seems like where all your budget went.
That's where they went on to talk about the male being killed, the female was still alive, and
Hmm.
It was,
there was still some semblance of light and dawn.
yes, but
And he
he's
cannot stand in the sun, in the
oh,
light.
okay. Fair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean,
But
that's how they
it looked like he
blast him at the end.
shapeshift into like something completely else because like you don't have the horns.
I know. You're questioning too many things.
Just shut up and enjoy the movie for what it was.
Look,
Exactly.
man, I wish I could. I wish I
Sometimes,
could.
sometimes you just have to shut your brain off and enjoy some mindless entertainment, man.
Yeah.
Look, there are plenty of movies that we've covered on here before that are perfectly mind-numbing content. Like Halloween Kills, that's a great example. I don't have to think about that movie. It's just it's just a bloodbath, you know? But for this one, I just
At least you didn't say Halloween ends.
no. Halloween ends turns your brain to mush. Halloween kills, you can just allow your brain to turn to mush and just enjoy the ride.
Halloween ends was horrible. It was
It
dumb.
was.
I didn't see it. I didn't bother.
You didn't miss anything.
Mm.
It didn't even fit the storyline of the previous two movies at all. So yeah.
Go check out our episode on both Halloween Ends and Halloween Kills. We dissected it to no ends. But uh Mark, I really tried to like find something in here to talk about and relate to relation to mental health. And there is a line that Tom Cruise's character says. It says, "Darkness is where we'll stay." Almost, and he says it almost in defeat as well. And that feels very much like the attitude that depression can kind of like have on you is like you just feel stuck, you feel defeated, you feel like it's inevitable, like this is where you've made your bed and this is where you have to lie until you go sleep.
Well, see,
And
I wondered if you were going to go this route or if you were going to go the oppressive, abusive relationship route between Lily and um, Darkness.
well, so let's talk about both. So I mean, I feel like you could probably speak to the latter. I've never been in aggressively abusive relationships. I've kind of dated girls in the past that have been dicks, but not like outright like abusive. I feel like there's definitely a clear cut line. Um, but I've definitely gone through like depression. I've definitely felt that like absolute like darkness, like this is it kind of thing.
And I have been through that. So that may be why it kind of stood out a little more than to me. He had that. It was all about trying to manipulate her into liking him. And how often do you hear these days about relationships going that way and the manipulation and abuse and then trying to make the other people look like they're crazy? And that's kind of like
Yep.
almost what he was doing here was trying to, oh, see, you are like one of us. You are one of us. Go
Hmm.
ahead and drink that. Be one of us.
Yeah, and I mean I feel like that's also too like on par because like I've been going reading this book talking about like how the evangelical church has kind of like done a lot of harm when it comes to the subject of sex and relationships. It's always kind of told so from a male's perspective rather than from a unilateral like together perspective as it should be. And so like one of the things that I feel like that book has talked about that I've really had to kind of also uh come to grips with is the fact that like, it's really easy to be manipulative in a relationship to get what you want. Because you're taught that that's what you have. And I feel like there's so many other like fantasies. Like I grew up on the 90s. I grew up in an era of Disney princesses from Ariel, Beauty and the Beast,
It
Hunchback of
explains
Notre
so
Dame.
much.
Uh but like, you taught an entire like generation that like every female is essentially like a damsel in distress and like is easily to be manipulated and like how easy it is to like coerce. When the thing about relationships are is that they take honesty, vulnerability, and a lot of trust. And especially when you're in a relationship that is, committed, or there's kids involved, like, or there's a sexually active component to that relationship. There's you have to be communicative and not a dick. Don't be vindictive or manipulative. It's as easy as that.
So many things revolve around the key phrase of "don't be a
Me
dick."
too. I like to point out too that when he was like woo her, do you remember what the first thing he tried to woo her with was?
The food, I think.
Jewelry.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, that is like the cookie cutter, like, oh, I'm gonna try to get a girl. I'm gonna buy her some jewelry. It was just shiny things. Personally, if I am like trapped in a place, I'm not going over to the shiny
Yeah.
pots and pans and jewelry. Okay. Like that was the first thing. And they were just like bedazzle her with this necklace and diamonds. And it's just like that's the thing also with abusive relationship is people can use that and be like, oh well, I bought you things, I took care of you, I paid for things. They think that you owe them because they gave you something like materialistic, and it doesn't work like that. It's not like a guy at a bar, oh, I bought you a drink, you have to go home with me now.
Yeah. It also like kind of like belittles the like actual person that's experiencing the abuse as well. I think that having also come from toxic jobs in the past to where sometimes it is kind of like, oh, I've given you everything you want, so you're gonna work, X, Y, or Z days and stuff like that. And it's not. It's like I always tell people, it's like you have to understand that like your value and your worth have to come before a relationship, a job, friendships, like because at the end of the day, like all of those things they come and go, but your mental health is something that you are forever with. And that needs to be the one thing that you take legitimately to stay here forever.
There was actually, I have to give credit in this movie for one really good part was when was it Ula she wanted a kiss from Jack. And how many movies has there been like Matrix did this and stuff where the like girl or guy is always like, "Oh, you have to kiss me and then you can get what you want." And he actually stood his ground and kept his boundaries and was like, you are not the woman I love, I'm not going to kiss you. Like a little innocent kiss to get out of a cage like is not a big deal, but at the same point it was to him. So he's willing to sacrifice that just to keep his like morals and stay true to himself, to not betray the woman that he loved.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
yeah, that was Una, I think was her name. Una.
Yeah, the fairy.
And yeah, she had her own issues.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't care what you want. This is what I want.
She was
Make me believe it.
aggressive. She was literally trying to like essay him, but he was like, no.
Yeah, that's what that scene was turning into quickly.
Mm-hmm. They handled it well, but they very easily could have went in a different way.
Coming soon, the R-rated cut.
I did like the one thing she said in her quote where she's like, I'm not gonna do it perfectly, but like human hearts are soft and mushy and fairy hearts are like wild and free or something. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she makes a comment about the hearts of fairies don't feel like the hearts of man or something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Or do you remember that, Josh?
I I do remember it. I don't see this
He's
episode
trying
going
to
on any longer than this.
blacken it out. He's like, I've said my piece. I'm good.
Like it was a shit movie. It
Yeah.
had good costumes. I had to dig to come up with something mental health.
Yeah.
I am done and ready for bed.
Well, the biggest mental health takeaway is that you can't have darkness without light, and they equally balance out. So you'll have good days and bad days, and the bad days there to remind you how important the good days are, and that you don't take them for granted and you enjoy them for what they are. And bad days will happen, and it's just part of life, and you have good with bad, and it's gonna be okay.
Well, I think even on that note, building on top of that, sometimes it's the bad days that shape us and mold us into the people that we are today.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would not be on this call. There would probably not be a Victims and Villains nonprofit organization had I not gone through depression and anxiety, suicidal thoughts, and lost a friend to suicide. Like it was like literally some of the worst years of my life, and they've all brought me here right now talking about this crappy fantasy movie. So, count your blessings because they really do shape your life. And yeah, Mark, you want to add anything?
You're being all deep over there, and I'm like, I'm on this because like I was persistent and didn't go away.
And I'm here because you guys keep asking me to come back.
Well, we are gluttons for punishment, as you said. So if people want to join us in being gluttons for punishment, where can people find you online?
Oh, well, I am spread across the world, wide web, and I'm mainly on Twitch at Zambies. You can find me there, and I stream twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, painting. I'm doing Friday nights Diablo 4 because, yeah, I'm hooked. That's out. And then I have a YouTube channel, Zambies there too. And then most of all my other socials, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, which I hate, is Zambies Decays.
Yeah, I still believe Twitter is a cult.
It's awful. I only have it like just to keep contact with a few people. It's a hellhole.
Yeah, it is. I haven't updated my Instagram in a while because I've been moving and packing, and it's been a long time. So yeah,
Mark,
but I'm
Mark
still
is
there,
Mark is back with his excuses. Some things never change.
dude. I just moved over 900 miles cross country.
It's a big move.
I know. You were like 2 hours away from me, and now you're like 16. So
It was 14 for me from Virginia Beach to here.
yeah,
You
yeah,
move
and you're two
further
hours from me,
away?
so you're
Oh.
16 from me now.
So you were in the ocean?
Maybe. I don't know.
Josh, now you gotta move. It's your turn. I moved
I
2 years
just
ago. He
moved.
moved.
I
Oh,
just moved.
well, time
Anyways,
to pick up again.
uh, where can people find you online, Mark?
Titanium, titanium juggernaut painting. It should be starting to get updated in the coming weeks when I can start working again.
Well, make sure you guys stalk him over there, stalk Zambies. You
Yeah.
guys can find me. I am Captain Nostalgia on Letterbox. You guys can follow Abyss Gazing wherever you guys get your horror your podcast from. Find us there. And you guys can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube as well. So yeah, and we're gonna keep this bad movie train rolling because we got a showdown next episode. We are pitting Lamageddon, Sharknado, and the
Velocipaster.
Velocipaster against each other to
Oh
answer the
my
question,
goodness.
which one is the worst? So join us next week. And until next time, remember, the more you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes into you.